So the big question with the Blair Witch Project is, how does it hold up after 26 years since its release? So I revisited this as my Halloween pick for this year. Kind of a good idea in the end, seeing as this movie actually is set on Halloween. I'd completely forgotten that detail about this story, but of course when the characters all arrive, talking to the locals before they go into the woods, this is actually set on Halloween. But I was apprehensive going back into this film and to watch it again, because it left such a mark on me when I was younger and saw this for the first time. I thought it was absolutely terrifying. The whole story, the lead up, the final sequence that everybody of course talks about, left a mark with me, and I did genuinely find it to be a scary film. And part of me worried that after all these years, we've had so much horror, so many different movies, the found footage style has been worn out to death. I was worried that it wasn't going to hold up. But I'm very pleasantly surprised by how good this movie still stands up. I think this is an excellent found footage film, again made for a tiny budget, and is genuinely powerful, effective, and still quite scary. So this is basically a faux documentary style movie where it's about these group of 3 kids who were going out to film a documentary around the superstition of this area about this Blair Witch who supposedly lived out in the woods in this state in America. And they're kind of going out with their little high-8 camera and 16mm camera to document it all in their experience and any weird goings on. They speak to the locals, and we're effectively supposedly watching the tapes that have been found years and years after their disappearance. And because, as I said, I was too young when I first saw this to kind of hear about the marketing for it, but I do know that the way it was marketed, they kind of implied that it was a true story and that these really were found tapes, and they were kind of edited together to make a full movie out of it, which is obviously very clever for the time, given that we had much more limitations in terms of the details and information we were able to research. Like it now, we probably kind of take for granted how quickly we can fact check and research things. Whereas even into the late 90s, things were still fairly primitive. So there's only so much you could find out about it, especially for a young person like me, watching this on a DVD with my friend when I was very young. We had no idea what we were watching. And we, as I say, we did find it absolutely terrifying. So obviously a genius bit of marketing. Again, especially when found footage was in its early days, hadn't really been done properly before, and obviously hit the mark big because this movie made an absolute killing. I think it either is the most successful horror movie ever made in terms of like return on their initial budget. It might be this or Paranormal Activity, I'm not sure, but it was a huge financial hit, and has been, of course, remembered on to this day. So it's funny, actually, last night I was talking with some of my movie friends about the comparisons of this Blair Witch to the 2016 remake that Adam Wingard made, and kind of talking about which one's more effective and why. And for me, this one works so much better and is much more scary because it's all about that anticipation of what could be out there. I think that is way scarier to me. Like, for some reason in horror, the build-up and the mystery angle is the thing that scares me. When you actually see something, it's never as scary as you imagine it to be in your head. Like, in your imagination, that is where the fear is built. And with movies like Blair Witch from 2016, whilst I don't dislike the movie, I actually quite enjoy it, but the fact that a lot of the horror is actually shown on screen, like you actually do see the witch at the end, which is a cool visual effect, but the second you actually see it, a lot of that kind of fear of the unknown is gone and is lost. And the fact that this movie never actually shows you anything is what really makes it so impactful, I think. I've forgotten about all of that build-up within the woods, like how intimidating they make the forestry feel. Like you really feel with these characters like you are lost deep out into the middle of the woods with no one there to help you. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, something about being lost deep in the woods as it's starting to get dark, there is just something kind of disturbing about it. Like looking out at trees for miles and just woods and forestry, I just find it a little bit unsettling. And I think this movie doesn't feel like a shiny Hollywood movie where they're in the edge of the woods filming a film. You know, this genuinely feels like a documentary, even though you know it's not watching it now. It does genuinely feel like you're deep into this wilderness and you're not coming back out of there. And I think the movie really does hit hard in that respect. I was just surprised by how tense it still makes me feel, even so many years on. There's a few really heavy hitting scenes in this movie, like when they're starting to really break down a little bit after a few days, when they realise they've lost the map and they're getting tired and hungry and they're starting to genuinely become concerned, and the friendships start to break down. And there's a moment earlier where they've crossed this river over this like kind of log pile that's built up over the river. So they go over the crossing, they've been walking all day, and they arrive back and realise they've kind of looped back around to this place. And that whole scene, the way it plays out, like just the despair and the panic in these people's voices as they're realising, like the way that Heather, the character, she's just kind of going into complete denial, looking at it like, no, it's not the same one, it's not the same. And the guys are just absolutely losing it because they know they've looped back around. It hits hard. It really does hit hard. Like, it's a genuinely depressing and nightmarish moment where you think, oh, being in that situation is just, it would be so awful. It would be so awful. And to me, the way the characters handle this situation and how, because they're young kids, really, like they're in their early 20s, and the way they really start to panic and freak out and fall out with each other, it feels very real to me. And this is obviously something that really annoys people about the film. They don't like the characters. They find they're shouting and just them screaming at each other and their frustration and how they fly off the handle. They find that really annoying. But I can watch it and kind of put myself in the situation of these characters, because I've not ever been in a situation like this exactly, but I have been in situations where, maybe something's happened, where the situation becomes frustrating, and people do sometimes get loud and panicky and annoyed with people really quickly, like they lose their temper. And it rang true to me, like it really does. It feels real. And that's, again, what puts me into the whole immersive state of this film. Like, some people watch this and just say, it's these young, annoying teens shouting at each other and nothing happens for an hour and a half. But for me, all of the elements that are put in here, the dynamic between the characters, the kind of unsettling nature of it all, the way they start to kind of lose themselves in there and start to panic, that stuff just feels real, and that's what makes this thing scary. Each of the nights as they go by, something weirder and weirder happens, and like on a couple of them, they start actually hearing people shouting out in the woods. And whilst it's obviously a movie, again, putting yourself in that situation, camping out in this wilderness, and hearing people shouting in the distance in a tent, it must be absolutely awful. Like, to me, that is the kind of stuff of nightmares that I find genuinely quite unnerving. And the way it's done in this, the way it's just kind of, again, shown from their POV, with these kind of cheap looking cameras where you can hear stuff, it just all feels so real. And I can't help but think, damn, that would be horrendous to be in that situation. So yeah, really impactful stuff. And again, doing this stuff without a budget, you don't need... It's funny, actually, I'm about to get into another review for Shelby Oaks, which is a bit of a talking point within horror at the moment. That's a low budget horror. And for all the reasons that does not work, which I'll explain in my review, are the reasons that this movie does work. That what they managed to do with such a limited budget. This was made for like nothing. It was like a few tens of thousands it was made for. And the amount of creativity they managed to put into this thing and how real they make it feel. It's pretty astounding, if we're being honest. Of course, the final sequence is the big talking point of this movie. This was kind of the famous scary scene that kind of wrapped this up. And again, it's one that some people find laughable, and can't take it seriously and think it's a crap ending. And other people, like me, think it's genuinely chilling and impactful. And I will admit, watching it again now, because I have seen the ending a number of times. Like I've seen the film before. I knew it was coming. I've seen the scene before. It's been talked about so much. If you're into horror, you just know this scene like the back of your hand. So I didn't feel that same sense of like, oh my God, like chilled to the bone that I did when I saw this. Well, probably pushing 15, 20 years ago now. But still, it works. It does really work. I think the whole house, like the look of the architecture in the house and stuff, and just the way it looks so run down, and they're all screaming and it's dark and they're really freaking out, and just seeing that guy kind of standing looking into the corner, there is just something that feels so off and wrong about it. You can feel that there's a presence or something in that area. And the fact they never show anything, that is what hits me. That is what makes me think, wow, even now at my age, I can still find that genuinely quite scary. And as I say, you don't get that with the later 2016 film, because they decide to go there. They show the witch. As cool and as well done as it is, it just loses something. The fear is God. Keeping these things unknown is the way to go in a horror movie like this. So yeah, great experience going back to watch this again. Highly recommend you revisit this film if it's been some time for you. And of course, watch this if you're a horror fan. You must have seen the Blair Witch Project. So anyway, I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5 rating, guys. Do let me know down in the comments what you think of the Blair Witch Project. Thanks so much for watching as always. Do take care, and I'll see you soon.